of borders, and a rejection of the inadmissibility of the use of force to settle international disputes, all three of which are cardinal principles of the UN and part of our punch shield in our foreign policy, and they were all violated, but we never said anything. So that is also something that happened. And you could go even further back and say 2003, the American invasion of Iraq was also a violation of state sovereignty, also a use of force, also a violation of borders. So, you can find examples, but the charter remains because it is extremely difficult to amend. An amendment requires a huge amount of political will, which is essentially not there for anything. So to this day, the UN Charter contains a reference to enemy states. Who are these enemy states? The second and third largest financial contributors to the UN, Germany and Japan. But it's too much of a hassle to sit around amending the Charter to delete those words. You left them there. And even Germany and Japan doesn't stop them from giving so much money to the UN every year. That's the other. Your second question, I've already forgotten. US aid. Strictly speaking, India is not at all a recipient of government-to-government aid from the USA. Once upon a time, it may have been in the 60s and 70s, perhaps, not even the 70s much, but certainly not in my short-term recollection. But USA does finance individual projects in India of institutions, NGOs, civil society bodies, and they will hurt. But they are actually working with and helping Indians in need, whether it's particularly poor, marginalized communities, healthcare projects for poor and seriously ill people, all of those things. Three comments to make. The first is that certainly you're right that India could play a constructive role for peace, and it's striking that the Indian Prime Minister is amongst the very few world leaders who has been to both sides of the conflict, who has been to Russia and been to Ukraine, has met the leaders of each country, has talked to the leaders of each country, and has witnessed firsthand the horrors of the war. Secondly, it's also true that public statements have been made welcoming a possible Indian role. And I don't think there is any lack of willingness on India's part to play a constructive role. Having said that, this is where the third comment comes in. Any peace requires willingness on both sides to want to make peace. A mediator never imposes peace. A mediator capitalizes on either the exhaustion of the parties or on the parties' willingness to look beyond their entrenched positions. Now, I think it's also a question of timing. I think initially when India had expressed a certain interest in going to both sides, talking to both sides and so on, at that time, it was already, I think, becoming clear that a very major new factor was going to arise with the US election result.